Okay, so we are live now. Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to all our viewers who have tuned in today. On behalf of the Atal Innovation Mission Niti Aayog team, I would like to welcome you all to join us today for this very exciting and important panel discussion, Innovations in Audio Tech. This panel discussion is a part of the AIM ILEAP program, which comprises a 45-day sector-specific cohort designed to support startups in overcoming two major bottlenecks, that is, market access and investor access. The current Innovations in Audio Tech cohort is the fifth edition of the AIM ILEAP program. In the past, we have conducted similar cohorts in four domains, namely fintech, cybersecurity, home-based healthcare innovations, and fighting air pollution through innovation. In these four cohorts, a total of 35 startups got a chance to pitch to about 90 plus investors and enterprises. Till now, 70 plus connections have been made between the startups and the investors on prizes, and many of these conversations are in their final stages. These cohorts saw the presence of some of the marquee players from the government side, such as the Indian Navy, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Central Pollution Control Board, and so on. In the current cohort of Innovations in Audio Tech, the application forms are still open till 15th of April. We urge all the startups in audio tech to participate in this program in large numbers. We have chosen this theme this time for the cohort as we have observed that innovations in audio tech are on the rise and it's a booming area. As the innovation ecosystem builder of the nation, AIM's intention is to create a vibrant, innovative ecosystem by bringing together all the relevant stakeholders, such as audio tech startups, equipment manufacturing organizations, and the government. So without further ado, let me invite the panelists for today. We have Dr. Chintan Vaishnav, Mission Director, who will also be the moderator. We have Ms. Shubha Mudgal. She's a Hindustani classical music singer. Ms. Namrata Kohli. She's honorary member, Sanskriti Hath Samiti, Center for Cultural Resources and Training, Ministry of Culture. Next, we have Mr. Sriram Emani, co-founder and CEO of Indian Raga. And last but not the least, we have Mr. Sriraman Thiagarajan, co-founder and CEO, Agraya Technologies and Avaz.com. May I now request Dr. Chintan Vaishnav, Mission Director AIM, to carry forward the panel discussion. Over to you, Chintan, sir.
Thank you, Anurag, and greetings to everybody on the YouTube Live. As Anurag said, this is our fifth round of ILEAP challenge. The one thing that we have learned, which has been a very and have received this very pleasantly, is that India's innovation ecosystem seems to stand at a point where one can put out a challenge on many topics, and there will be some or the other good startups that would step up to this challenge. When we started ILEAP, this was the question, right? We are going to throw this party. Are they going to show up? And they are showing. So that's wonderful. This idea of the audio tech, well, there are several people at AIM who are themselves artists. And we have been discussing entrepreneurship and technology for arts. But recently, we were further our urge to do something was further strengthened as the Honorable Prime Minister gave out a call to do startups in music, for example. And we thought, why not use ILEAP to see how what we learn about what people are doing in this field. So that's how this idea of audio tech cohort or audio tech based challenge came up. Now, there also we had a little bit of confusion in that we really wanted to do all arts, right? But that was too much for a 45-day challenge. So we said, okay, let's go with audio tech. So that's how we started. Now, there's also a little bit of a deeper reason for this, right? This also comes from the perspective of the innovations ecosystem of India. There's always this conversation within the government about what is it what do we have to do in order to do science and technology-based, deeper, more impactful startups? In other words, not only do apps, but also do something deeper. One of the realizations here that we have had in our conversations is that arts is certainly one area where India exhibits a tremendous amount of depth, right? It has exhibited over years this depth. And so can we marry this idea of technological innovation and arts and see where we go with it? And so that's the deeper reason why we are attracted to this idea of AudioTech. So I'm really delighted that we have a star panel today, we're going to start by just first laying out what the problem space is, right? Whether this group of people are innovating to solve those problems or not, people on YouTube may have some or the other solution or may be encouraged to come up with solutions to work on that. So let me start with our most senior and well-known panelist, Shubhaji. What, from your experience, do the musicians or artists demand today that innovations in audio tech can serve?
Thank you, first of all, for giving me this opportunity. I am somebody who is not an expert on either technology or specifically audio technology, but as a stakeholder who would very much benefit from any innovations in this area, I'm really grateful that you chose to invite me to speak in this very learned and esteemed panel. And I think that in the last 2 years, the reason why a lot of artists have been able to communicate with each other has been because of technology. Because in the last 2 years, as you know, there was the possibility of physically meeting each other was not there. So a lot of learning, teaching happened on thanks to the use of technology. However, I would have to say that although it kept us going for these 2 years, I think it's very important also to look at customization of already existing technology as well as new innovations that would serve the purpose of Indian music in particular. And I'm afraid that all the means of communication that are at the moment available to us are meant mostly for video conferencing, but not necessarily for the use of transferring and transmitting complex ideas, musical ideas to each other. Yes, I do know that some of the platforms that are available have certain settings that can enhance your audio reception and give you better sound, better audio quality. And at the same time, they still remain extremely unsuitable for, let's say, the learning and teaching of something like Hindustani music. All video conferencing technology cuts out background sound or aims to do that. So when you have a tanpura playing in the background, it is treated as like the hum of an air conditioner, and constantly the technology tries to take that off. Now this becomes a perennial problem for us. Also, we teach, our way of teaching is to make the student repeat after us. The lag that we currently face makes it impossible for us to be in sync with students or with colleagues. And I believe that in Mumbai, certain musicians who are very adept at technology have been able to find the solution for that lag. But at the moment, I think perhaps I should ask them to apply to your innovation lab, because I think that while they've made a breakthrough, they haven't found investors, or perhaps not the suitable investors for this. But one thing, Dr. Vaishnav, that I would like to really mention over here, that although audio technology is an important, and you are discussing that, I really feel that rather than audio technology, I mean, audio technology is galloping forward in many ways. However, is it available to the general artist in India? How artist friendly is it? I think that also needs to be discussed. So the most complicated equipment, the wonderful high fidelity audio equipment that is available may actually not be accessible for, let's say, a person who is singing kirtan in a temple, or a person who is singing qawwali at a Sufi shrine. Is it possible for them to own or even hire that equipment? So I think technology can prove really, really helpful in other ways by mapping what is the current census of professional musicians in India. We don't even have an inkling about that, because the census just puts us in the other category. So we don't even really know we don't have data to show us what is the number of professional musicians making their livelihood only through music. Then how can we think of welfare for them when we don't even know the numbers that we are catering to? And of course, all the other data that such an exercise through technology could provide at very fast speeds. So I think, other than audio technology specifically, I think we also need to utilize technology available to really map our artists and many other informations that are linked with these artists at the fastest and the most urgent.
Oh, fantastic. Well, so my technologist friends in the audience on YouTube, did you hear that machines have a long way to go in understanding what the artists need? Did you hear that your ideas about latency and jitter and all of that in the internet has still to learn about this audience or these set of users? And then, of course, finally, you have invoked a very different set of audience for the direct benefit transfer, which is the artists. So fantastic. Now, Sriram, you and I have talked about this kind of a question in the global context. Do you want to share what you're seeing or what you've learned as to where the gaps are?
Absolutely. I'm going to share a few slides just to sort of take it through that. Did they have to enable the sharing or?
It's enabled, Sriram. You just need to share it.
Okay. So got it.
By the way, Sriram is up for us at 6:30 in the morning in Boston. So thank you very much.
My pleasure to be here. For some reason, I think I'm facing some trouble. So let me kind of get started and just talk through it. Meanwhile, it's asking me to grant open system preferences for some reason, but that's fine. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is that and to reiterate Shivaji's point, there is a lot that needs to be thought about from an Indian culture perspective. A lot of what is being innovated on takes into account, a more global set of cultures. And I think what I'm going to speak about is very specific to what we're observing as needs of Indian artists. So audio technology has been changing over the years, and most artists have, especially in the culture sector, really adapted to that remarkably well. What I'm thinking about and seeing is from three dimensions. One is for aficionados who really want to start getting into understanding and analyzing and appreciating music, or like performing arts in general. The second then moves on to them wanting to then start learning and becoming students, and then empowering the teachers who are part of that process. And finally, performers. So these are broadly the three areas where AudioTech really can be supportive. And the students or the aficionados can start to use AudioTech as a tool to analyze and appreciate it. So when you look at if you go into a restaurant, or if you are listening to something on YouTube or on TV, you can use apps like Shazam to really know which song that is, because there is a database that has been incorporated that will tell them what song that is. Now that technology is advancing globally to start presenting more information about that piece of music that you're listening to. So there's a long way to go for that in the context of Indian music, especially Indian classical music, but even more so other forms of Indian music, folk music and other ones. You can't just have an app detect what that is unless you're part of that whole database and that library. So audio tech companies that are working at the intersection of identifying ragas or identifying what this is can really go the next step in creating that bridge for people who want to learn more about music to understand it when they listen to a piece of music. And I think in a context today where one of the big things that motivated me to start this company is there's a huge gap unless you come, I mean, at least the perception is that unless you come from a musical family or a family that appreciates music, you can't really get started on learning music. But many times I feel like students today or kids are motivated by what they're listening to. So when they listen to something and they kind of start learning more about it, I think that creates a bigger funnel of students who would want to start learning that form of music. So that's from the aficionado perspective. The second thing, when it comes to them becoming students, one of the biggest things we see across 90% of our students is that initially they struggle to understand pitch. So it's easy to say that you have a sense of pitch, but many times you probably don't. And that often becomes the distinction between someone being able to sing the first 7 notes and someone just never getting where to even start the sa. Globally, in many softwares and many startups, for Western music, have started this concept of pitch tracking. So you can see what the pitch is that you're supposed to be singing at, and then when you're singing, you can visually see that pitch being represented. I'm so sorry, my slide actually shows all of that, but I don't know why I'm not being able to share it. So if you can provide that, I feel like that big hurdle for many thousands of students will be overcome pretty easily. That presents more unique challenges in the context of Indian music because it is not staccato, right? So, when you have the gamak or the harkat, depending on the style of music, being able to go to that level of detail and being able to break it down that these are the different types of, ornamentations that we use, being able to demonstrate that through a visual thing, I think can be a very immediate use for many thousands or even millions of students across India. And also become an aid for teachers to be able to offer that solution to them. And then finally coming down to performers, actually both for students and for performers, there's a huge use on TikTok and other social media channels where you can have loops created to practice. So oftentimes, what we have now, we have iTabla Pro and we have, the Tanpura apps, but there's a whole host of Indian instruments, both classical and folk, where we can create loops for people to be able to sing along with them. And what that helps for students and performers is to start visualizing content where they can go beyond and think of these other interesting Indian instruments and work with those. And especially for younger students, I've always wanted, for example, kids toys often have Western classical music playing as the background. Like I used to have a toy where you pull out the tail, and then as the tail goes back in, it'll slightly play Mozart, going in. And we have a whole host of lullabies. We have a whole host of folk music. We have phenomenal music. And I think kids should be listening to those instruments and those songs at a very young age when they're still impressionable and can start retaining it. I think childhood memories made through music often are the biggest motivator, for people to want to learn or pursue or remember those traditions. So from a performance and from a learner rehearsal standpoint, having loops that use more Indian instruments, I think would be really beneficial as well. So just to summarize, for aficionados, being able to analyze and understand and appreciate the music, for students to be able to take that to the next level and have tools to aid their learning, either for pitch or for rhythm, or to be able to practice with instruments. And finally, for performers to be able to create quick loops on which they can put their music and present it online. Those would be the main areas I would think about for AudioTech.
Okay, so I think we have laid a bunch of gaps on the table, but let's go to Sriraman, since you have a very different dimension to your work in the audio space. So some more problem statements, please, and then we will go to Namrata after you.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, everyone. Good to be here. So, in my opinion, in the last few years, audio has been unbundled by various companies. For example, if you look at how we listen to music today, it's mostly playlist driven, not an MP3 or a CD or a cassette where you used to listen to sequentially or something like that, right? So almost all the companies now use technology for creating playlists that you might like, right? So they have like 200, 300 signals. So music has been unbundled. And then we have audiobooks, which is also, there are companies that makes audiobooks, and then comes the spoken word audio. For example, that's what I do on avaz.com. We create spoken word in 22 different genres like fiction, humor, devotion, thriller, so on. So anything that's not music, anything that's not a book, we classify that as a podcast or spoken word, and that's how we work, right? And Shivaji made very interesting points about what if there is a small time artist, what can tech do? In fact, we have creators from let's say somewhere in Mewar. There is, we get that accent, and when we are creating a story about Maharana Pratap, we have talent from Rajasthan working. We know we have people from East UP. They have a very different dialect than one in any other parts of the country, so on. So what we are able to do is work with variety of creators across, and they are at the comfort of their own home or their town. And today so much technology has made it possible that even with a very minimum investment of a basic mic and a mobile phone, people are able to create content and we buy them out. That's how we work. So we are like a Netflix of audio. So the challenge, all this is just the context, but challenges that I see is somehow audio is where audio has a lot of soul to it, but video has a lot of appeal to it, right? So you see short form video, long form video, there's a lot of video stuff going on. So somehow there is a lot of attention on video, and somehow audio has been ignored, or it's not in the, it's not been taken up, taken to the spot. But thankfully, I mean, if you look at the Prime Minister's podcast, Man Ki Baat, that's a big turning point. I think there was one estimate that indicated about 66% of all people in India listen to it, which is more than 600 million, right? So that's the world's biggest podcast in that sense. So if there can be more initiatives from, whether it is cultural initiatives or whether it is knowledge dissemination, information broadcast, or news and sports, if there is more attention given or initiatives given to audio as a medium, it is a non-intrusive way, right? You could be working and listening to it. You could be driving. You could be like, even if you look at SMEs, like let's say a tailor shop, that kind of SMEs I'm talking about. There are 5 people working there. They can't take their eyes off, but they can definitely listen something in the background. But we only have FMs playing filmy music, but there is so much more in audio. So I would say that, we need more people to take audio as a interesting avenue to express creativity. So that's my ask.
It's fantastic. So let me say, along with your ask, let me just say that many people on this YouTube may or may not know, but Atal Innovation Mission, they launched a program called a Vernacular Innovation Program, or announced a program called Vernacular Innovation Program last December, where we are trying to decouple the creative expression from the language of transaction in India's innovation ecosystem. So there's a lot of activity here as well. So much to do together. Let's go to Namrata. Namrata, your exposure has been with a wide variety of art forms. And so could you help us broaden this conversation and talk about where technology can help other art forms as well while we're at it?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chintan, for having me on the panel. I love the topic, which is extremely pertinent. And with your permission, I want to share a few slides on this topic.
Let's try it.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
There we go.
You can put it on full screen, Namrata ji.
Yeah, I'm just trying to do that. Okay. So, well, there are very many gaps that technology can fill, and the reason is that, well, there are too many challenges that the culture segment is confronted with at this point of time. And as our entrepreneur audience would know clearly, that every challenge is an opportunity. So the first and foremost challenge that we identify is that it culture still remains the purview of the elites, and what is it that can take it from the classes to the masses, you know uh, until and unless that happens, the fullest potential of the sector will never be realized. I'll share an analogy. Let's take a look at the health tech sector. So when health tech companies created the generic drug list, created much more awareness and information on drug dosage and doctors, and created far more competitive packages for diagnostic labs. It actually transformed the healthcare story to become far more accessible, far more affordable, and far more understandable. So technology can really be that catalyst which can help culture transform into a far more effective, far more vibrant sort of a sector. So why I'm saying vibrant, because I take objection to the word preserving culture. You know, culture is a living entity. It need not be it's not a relic onto the bookshelf that needs to be preserved. It needs to be surviving. It needs to be thriving. And again, technology can play a very eminent role in ensuring that it survives and that it thrives. You know, as Dr. Chintan rightly mentioned, that our culture has so much depth, so much meaning, yet it is not making the desired impact. And as far as I understand, it's because of exposure or the lack of it. So really technology can help bridge that gap. For instance, right now we see Indians chasing quinoa over amaranth, or avocado over amla, or olive oil over desi ghee. So the traditional wisdom that lies in our own kitchens is not getting implemented to start with. And like I said, it's about the food we eat, the way we dress up, the languages we use, we speak. So even in the case of languages, India has some 121 languages and at least 19,500 dialects which are spoken. And yet, the only language that matters is the one that we are communicating in. So, as our Vice President Venkaiah Naidu ji rightly said, that if you don't use a language, you will end up losing the language. So, technology can create that interest in making dialects much more popular, much more appealing, and there would be far many takers for it. And this would subtly also help in building brand India. So making past relevant in the present, technology can deploy the data that we have in the culture space and make it in and present it in a format with content in a way that it attracts the right eyeballs. So I'll share the example of Sadhguru, who is whose teachings are now famous worldwide, and the topics that he chooses, he uses YouTube to propagate his teachings, and it's extremely effective. So I recently, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we lost some iconic legends, the likes of Pandit Jasraj ji, the likes of Pandit Birju Maharaj ji. Can we allow bygones to be gone, or can we create modules and nuggets of information that we can dish out in audio formats for uh, for the legacy to continue into the present and even into the future? And on that note, I cannot help but recall what Durga Jasraji, I was very privileged to attend the launch of the Pandit Jasraj Cultural Foundation, and I remember Durga Jasraji mentioning that Bapuji's music, the music of Pandit Jasraj, actually has been used by hospitals and doctors worldwide to cure patients. Now, the therapeutic power of music, there's been a recent research I was reading the other day in the newspaper, how music therapy works, the power of Om, the power of Gayatri Mantra, the power of three particular ragas has been proven to cure to some extent certain diseases. So, if we can harness that potential, I think that would be excellent. Now, coming specifically to audio tech and culture, I agree with what Sri Raman says that the power of audio tech has not been harnessed to its fullest potential. And look at the irony. The story of Indian culture is one which has started with the oral tradition. You see, all our visual arts, whether it was the Gond painting or the Varli or the Mithila, Madhubani, they were all depiction of man's relationship with the others in the community or with nature. Or even the literary arts, all our Vedas, all Panchtantras, Akbar Birbal tales, etc., were passed on word of mouth. Or let's take a look at performing arts for that matter. It was headlined by the Guru Shishya Parampara, where things were dished out verbally, and the learning teaching process was mostly verbal. So I'm saying that sound has, in any case, has the maximum impact, and practitioners of classical music would, they very well know that even if you take out words out of a composition, even if there's not a single word, in a classical music composition, it will still have the uh, impact on taking you to a high level of consciousness. If you are willing to receive it, it will still have the power to awaken the chakras in your body. So I think we can definitely do something to harness the health benefits of music and add to that a component of storytelling. Now, what are the specific ways in which tech can intervene in the culture space? And these are thoughts which have been shared by certain people in the government and some of my own as well, and some based on what I have understood from my interaction with artists. So one is, can we have an Amazon of artists and art forms? You know, with their grading, just as companies are rated with their work experience, awards and accolades, availability, pricing. You know, it is a profession at the end of the day, and we will be doing more harm than good by talking about this industry as intangible, as subjective, and all those terms. So if we can do some standardization, it will restore dignity to the art and the artists, who will not be at the receiving end of haggling with people, or it will create access for corporates, communities, and individuals if they want to hire a certain talent for a certain purpose. We see it in the handicraft space that it's already happening. Handicraft is a very significant part of many e-commerce channels, but it still does not talk about the maker. So I think until the storytelling is there about the maker, the creator, and the process of creation, people will not be able to fully appreciate the beauty of our arts and crafts. Second, I think it's about instruments, and this is a very significant point, because you see, most of our instruments are getting dusted, and we don't find enough service providers to repair them, maintain them. So I'll give you the example of sitar versus guitar. There are far more takers for guitar today, and it has come to a point where to get a sitar maintained or to repair is a Herculean task. It's not impossible, but this is becoming a bit of a issue. Whereas you will find a piano in pristine condition in five-star lobbies, because there are enough people who are able to maintain it. Well, what we are saying is that irrespective of Western or Indian classical instruments, can we create a database of agencies that maintain these instruments region-wise across the country? Number three is vintage instrument practitioners. You see, with the likes of, let's take the state of Punjab. So Punjab has Algoza, Tumbi, and so many vintage instruments which are literally on the cusp of extinction, despite the rich history with which they come. Can we do something to map these vintage arts, their practitioners, talk about their history? Finally, not everyone can be an artist, but everyone can be an appreciator of art forms. This very powerful thought was actually made by Shrimati Uma Nanduri ji, who's the Joint Secretary of Ministry of Culture at a recent event at CCRT, Ministry of Culture. So I will extend this to say that maybe some tech company can create forums for art appreciation, for literary appreciation, film appreciation, and create a kind of a conversation in this space to educate the users about the nuances of art. So from mapping, documentation, content creation, presentation, propagation, dissipation, I think culture tech can play a very key role. On my final slide, why should any young entrepreneur be a part of India's cultural revolution? I think the reasons are too many. One is your own vested interest. Your culture is ultimately your own identity. It is what allows you to be from nobody to somebody and from somebody to everybody. And as they say, old is gold. So it's a chance for gold mining to be part of a cultural renaissance and a very significant revolution. As our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji has named this period starting from 15th August 2022 till the next 25 years as Amrit Kal, till the time India achieves 100 years of freedom. This is perhaps the most auspicious time to start something new. So it's the right time also. And finally, there's a debt that we owe to our parents, to our country, and we call it Matri Rin or Pitri Rin or Matri Bhumi Rin. So you owe it to your motherland, to revive its culture. And these are some of the quotes that I have personally, met these people, and they've said something very powerful about why we need to save our culture. And one of them is Shiriji Arvind Singh Mewarji. So he has artifacts and antique collection dating back to 1500 years. And that's truly amazing. And he says that yeah, saving your heritage is supremely important for a country like India for its identity, image, and inspiration. And finally, this point about listening and the powerful impact that listening has on any individual, which Sri Ram also mentioned about childhood memories and lullabies of Indian traditional folk being played out. Uh, Even Durga ji says that listening and the right kind of exposure is actually the biggest influence for anybody. And I think this can really be the starting point. And as for purists having a problem with fusion of music, with classical meeting contemporary, one of the very successful classical Indian instrumentalists, the road player Aman Ali Bangashi, he says that dilution is very important. He says that I cannot imagine playing Drupad in a college scenario. Kids are going to run away. So you have to customize, you have to entertain your audience, and that's really the key. On that note, I think I'll wrap it up. Thank you.
Good, Namrata, thank you so much. And you have definitely taken us to the deeper questions around sound, culture, heritage, and have brought in many more stakeholders into this conversation. Let me give a little bit of a forewarning or ask for a little bit of a permission here. One of the greatest exponents who has experimented with both the classical and the pop is at the table here. So I was, if you, just in terms of a little bit of heads up, if you are okay with it, Shubhaji, towards the end of this conversation, I'd like us to end with a little a little rendition from you. You think about it and let me know.
That's possibly the easiest thing for me, and it's more difficult for me to be part of a panel discussion which is so specialized like this one.
So let's, in the meanwhile, hear from two of the panelists who have been entrepreneurs and who have seen what are the challenges of becoming an audio tech startup and how they overcame those challenges. So maybe we can start with Sri Raman and then go to Sri Ram.
Yeah, so Dr. Chintan, our vision, was to, we are a 5-year-old company. Our vision was to build products in Indian languages. That's how the company came to be. And it all happened after the Geo launch, which made internet practically free. So we knew that millions more were gonna come online, right? So I think Namrata was saying, English is the lingua franca. That's just the first 100 million of Indians. But if you look at the next billion, they appreciate their own language. So we wanted to build product, software, technology, all of it, content in Indian languages. So that's how we started our company, and one of the product is Avaz.com. Like I said, it's currently in 4 languages: English, Hindi, Marathi, and Urdu. And next month we are launching Gujarati. So the challenges were, again, when I was saying that we are going the audio way, most people kind of were surprised and shocked because everybody was busy on video, right? So that TikTok was big, YouTube is still big, Netflix, whatever. So people were like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Right? Because everyone is going left and you want to go right or something like that, right? So when the word zig, you zag, something like that. But I had my strong convictions that there are many moments in a day where audio makes sense, right? So whether driving, walking, talking, whatever, there are so many moments in a day where audio makes sense. And like I said, it was all only music. Like, and mostly when I say music, it's music from the movies, not even any other form of music. So that was just dominating audio, right? So we really wanted to build this. So initially there were some challenges because people didn't, for us, we had to create our own original IP content. So we needed people who write scripts, keeping audio in mind, not a visual in mind, right? So because everybody is used to writing TV scripts or video scripts, creating an immersive experience in audio is very challenging. We do a lot of non-fiction, such as historic. We have shows about Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. We have a lot of shows about DTs and popular personalities. So creating that audio experience where you it still evokes the same feeling like a Mani Ratnam or a Rajmouli made a movie about history, right? You would see that effect on you. So how could you, I mean, how could you try something like that on audio with just the sound? So getting the right people, getting the right tech, convincing the people that, there is a market for audio, that itself was actually a very hilarious challenge in that sense, right? But yeah, it's all fine now. And yeah, like I said, if I can energize more people to take audio as a choice of creative expression, that's the biggest challenge we still have. I think together we can make it better one step at a time.
Great. Now let's go to Sriram. Sriram's journey is something I have known from the time it was an idea. But what has it been like?
Been phenomenal, and it's a project that's really close to my heart. Our vision really, in first and foremost, is to make it exciting for young kids to want to learn our classical art forms, music, dance, and hopefully we'll expand to other genres. And the second thing is to sort of build, a more exciting landscape for performing artists to be part of the global conversation on art and culture, especially from India. I think one of the biggest challenges we face is, and I think many other startups in the culture sector, specifically in India, is the need. So when an investor asks me, like, what is the need you're serving? It often becomes a big challenge, because if there is something else, you can say, oh, this is there for mental health, or like this can improve like your actual health, or this can improve like educational outcomes, you'll get a job. And if you know, most like edtech companies, like 99% of their courses are learning Python, learning data science, anything that could be directly linked to a job. So when someone comes and says, oh, why should I learn Indian classical music? Oftentimes it's like, oh, I can push it off to tomorrow. And that in one line is the single biggest challenge we face and continue to face, is that you can always push this off to tomorrow. And that tomorrow never comes. It comes for some people, but not for everyone. And so hence, what could potentially be many, many millions of students will be like, oh, but you can push it off to tomorrow. So potentially 1% of them are going to learn. So that is the biggest outcome. So the biggest challenge that we face in terms of forcing ourselves to really start linking this to outcomes. Oh, if you learn classical music, you'll get a job. Or if you learn classical music, your mental health will be good. Or if you learn classical music, you'll be more confident and you can present yourself better, personality. All of these are true. But just putting that into one box, I think, is a bit of a disservice, I feel. And I think we need to have a broader national conversation that not everything has to do with a job. Like, the purpose of education today has become getting a job. And great, sure, that's happening on all fronts. But for startups specifically, we need to talk about that, and I'd be open to any conversation on it. The second thing is about just really providing awareness to both investors and to teams on ground, that you cannot treat the art and culture space just like you would like a ride sharing app, right? Like it's a very different space. And this idea that you're going to pump like crores of money and suddenly get like 1 million students in 3 or 4 years, where is the process of learning? Like, there's an element of like customizing it to different learning styles. There's an element of sort of like figuring out like different cultures. Like, India is not a homogenous entity. There is so many different things within that. There are people who want to learn light music, and that's music too. Not everything has to just be about learning ragas. And there are all these like different individual groups that can come together, and that's a process that takes a little longer than your traditional startup ecosystem expectation. So having a little bit of like patient capital, I think, is another big need for many startups in this space, including AudioTech. Like, Audio and I have interacted with quite several of them over the last 6 or 7 years. We were trying to actually incorporate some of the technology into what we do, and I just realized that investors don't have the patience. And like, you're going to take something that is rich and deep, which has not been dumbed down, and you want to suddenly overnight transform that. It doesn't happen that way. It takes a little longer than that, and you need to appreciate that. Just like, it took people decades to figure out turmeric latte is like a big thing when our grandmothers gave it to us growing up. I mean, come on, right? So that, I think, is the second thing, patient capital. The third thing is just like awareness overall, of all. I mean, we have a whole ecosystem in the United States, starting from the grassroots level, about the musicals that people are part of. Like, it happens in school, people are exposed to it in school, and then they kind of like go on, and then when they become like adults and parents and grandparents, they take it back. For us in India, I think that grassroots level awareness of making art and culture part of your life is missing. Like, my mom tells me, like, every 2 weeks they used to go to a concert in Rajahmundry, close to their home in the temple. They used to go to a classical concert, and it was part of daily life. Today, for us to create awareness already of like these classical art forms, or like even any kind of culture that is not available easily on TV, is a gargantuan nightmare, which I think is difficult for a startup to solve alone. I think that is where we do need other interventions in the broader ecosystem to be able to speak on CNBC prime time, or like, Star News prime time about, India's culture and classical arts, and not just the popular culture. I think that's something that Doordarshan used to serve really well. And that is an element that we're missing right now. So just to quickly summarize, the need situation, like kind of saying that, there is a need for this to be part of our life to enrich our lives. It's as simple as that. Like, you have a much better life, and anybody knows that if the arts are part of it. Second is patient capital, and the third is like a more national level, like awareness of Indian tradition. I think would be the three biggest things startups can benefit from, and are currently an obstacle to scale.
Okay, that's fascinating. Also, something that government can do something about. What we as Atal Innovation Mission, we are learning this class of challenges where there is a certain amount of thing that startups, that is within the control of a startup to do, but the receiving fabric has to be stitched together by the government somehow, because it is across institutions and across geographies and so on. And
Absolutely.
A single startup is going to find it hard to do. So that's fascinating. How many? So you face investors, Sriram, in the United States or other parts of the world. How many investors you meet who say, "Oh, I'm an artist too. I love this idea."
Almost everyone. Almost
Oh.
everyone. And you know where the conversation stops? The conversation stops on saying, okay, and actually Shubhaji referred to this. Sorry, I forgot to bring this up. Research and market research data. The conversation literally stops at, what do you think is the market size of people wanting to learn classical music in India? And I have no way to answer that question, because there is no national level research. There are no surveys conducted, and definitely the government can do something about this, Chintan. It has recently started happening for handicrafts. I'm forgetting the name. Dastakari Heart, is that the one? They did a brilliant report, which had a lot of data about like artisans and how many of them, and which is one of the things I used for my Tata Fellowship project, a lot of the data from there. But for the other art forms, you don't have that. So the conversation literally stops at, what is the market size for this? And I'm just like, come on, if you're going to tell me the market size is 1 million for a country of 1.2 billion people, like, okay, that's a no-go. But there are a lot of investors who in their own personal life are absolutely fascinated. In fact, I'm actually thinking of an idea where we talk about like everything is so measured all the time. Like, we all want to be so precise. It's data science, it's numbers, it's science, all of that. And very soon, guess what? The robots are going to do all of that. The only thing that's going to be left really is stuff that is creative, that the human mind needs to do, that it can do with life experience, with creativity, with inspiration. And if we want to get our kids ready for that, or just anybody, why just kids, even adults for that, then you need to stop focusing just on those numbers and really look at like the thing that is there between the numbers. And I think that's where the government can really step in to create on multiple levels. And what you refer to is also a great one, research, number one.
That's very, very important point.
I think Shubhaji wants to say something.
Okay, yes, of course.
Could I just make a short point that, currently a lot of the funding that comes from the government for arts is bound by the fact that the receiver should be a not-for-profit. Now here we are talking of a situation where where the fact that you make a profit is what we are celebrating, right? So I think this paradox needs to be flattened out completely. Why should an artist not make a profit? Because the impulse to make art in any case is going to drive us forward. It's not going to stop us if we don't get the money. But in case we are discussing an issue like this, we need to stop thinking of arts either as philanthropy or as straightforward business planning or startups, and neither do we need to force artists and people working in the creative arts to insist. Why are we insisting that they should be not for profit? Because here there is a hypocrisy, so we need to, and I think it's just a question of reviewing. It's not from any sense of malice or not wanting to do anything, but it's existed for a long time. You have to review your policies occasionally. So there are wonderful schemes that the government has already for example, specifically for artists, but the amount of money that is given to them doesn't even match what a daily wage laborer would get if you actually put it on par with that. So I think these kind of strange conflicts and paradoxes need to be addressed at the earliest. Otherwise, the discussion doesn't go forward.
That's very important. I think it's so logical what you're saying, and yet so deeply seated into our processes that it comes up again and again and becomes a roadblock to something that's imminently doable. Yeah. Sriram, if you have any points about meeting Indian investors, because I'm sure you've done a bunch of that. What types of things you hear, Sriraman? What type of things? Yeah. Sorry. What kind of responses you hear?
Most people, I get responses which are either they don't understand. Like most of the investments today are in SaaS, software, fintech, BFSI, and those kind of things, or e-commerce. So many out of we have about 200 or so institutional investors that are in the top tier. So many of them prefer to invest in pure tech, right? Not in a company that wants to spend money producing content. So they are kind of they don't reject it, but they stay away from the space that they don't fully understand. They say that, look, we don't understand media and creativity, so we are not the best investors for you, right? Which is fair point. I mean, if they're not able to add any value but only cut a check, the conversations later are going to be very awkward. Yeah, so there are maybe there should be special funds or vehicles created for investing in arts and culture and content driven stuff, without which we might not have had a YouTube. In fact, YouTube founder is my college senior. I studied in the US, so we might not have a YouTube or a Netflix or any of the places where people enjoy content. But when it comes to writing a check, it comes down to COHORT or something. So maybe more vehicles, investment vehicles can be created or nurtured, or also I think people who have made their name, or let's say very prominent people in the performing arts, if they even become a small time angel investor, like even if they write a 2 lakh check for another company doing something to technologize or digitize arts and culture, that would add credibility to that startup, and maybe somebody else will start investing. It's like like a Sachin Tendulkar investing in a tech startup. He may or may not have any tech value there, but he's so prominent that others people start believing in it, right? So because he's blessed it, something like that. Like I think some of the film personalities have done that. I think if we are able to get some people from culture, music, arts, even if they forget the cash component, even if they come on board, like if they have some skin in the game, I think that will be a huge game changer for startups wanting to grow and scale with additional investment. Yeah. Otherwise, like Shivaji said, the impulse to create art, those people who have it, they will continue to do it. Can they build it, grow it, scale it? So that would definitely need investments, and initiatives like this would definitely accelerate it.
Yeah. No, I think so that those are some notes that Atal Innovation Mission should take in creating those platforms, bringing on those investors, or at least creating schemes by which an investor may even want to co-invest, or however we can get that movement going. That's work for us. So thank you for those suggestions. Let's go to experience what Sriram earlier mentioned. He said that a lot of the quantitative stuff is going to be done by robots. What about all these other things that we do without really having ever measured them, and yet we love them? And music, of course, is one of them. Shubhaji, when I heard that you were going to be on this panel, my mind went to the innovations that you have done in just bridging the classical tradition to pop tradition and so on. And then subsequently, my mind also went to Pandit Kumar Gandharva, who had done a lot of innovation in bridging classical tradition to the folk traditions. And so here's a quick question and then an open invitation to show us an example or a few examples. How did the thought of these innovations in classical music come to you, and what has been the response as a result of that, and what do they sound like?
So I've been very fortunate in the fact that I started studying music at a time when a lot of different kinds of work was going on, and I was meeting a lot of people who were working with film, with dance, with theater, with music of different kinds, and I got invited. As a student of music, I feel I'm a better listener actually. So I listen to a lot of music and I react to that. Of course, I have my personal preferences, but it's exciting for me to be living in an era where not only can I listen to some music which I'd never heard of before from India, but actually technology makes it possible for me to listen to music from Mali or from anywhere else in the world. And I think this is very exciting for me as a student of music. And I'm obviously, as a student of music, I'm curious, what is this like? Can I sing this phrase of music? And that's how you start entering into this world of discovery and journeying with the different kinds of music. So when I was invited by musicians who were working with, let's say, popular music, which I did not know much about, I had only studied Khayal and Thumri Dadra, which are two vocal forms from from Hindustani music. It was very exciting for me to suddenly see uh, not only the kind of music that they are making, but also the processes, the technology that they were using. I didn't know of let's say, programming or sampling in music. And suddenly it became very exciting for me to also be part of this process. So quite apart from the fact that I got a chance to interact with musicians who were specialists in a different form of music, it was also a very enriching learning experience for me. From my background of Hindustani classical music, which had only known acoustic instruments, ear training, tuning instruments on just by using your ear, uh, to be using tuners, to be using samplers, to be using, or at least witnessing. I cannot do all of that myself, but at least to see how it's all brought together has been a very, very exciting, enriching journey for me, and has also made it, normally people feel that a classical musician is going to either be very scared of technology or just going to say, I have nothing to do with technology and I will not ever have anything to do with technology. But what it has done is to show me how empowering technology can also be, albeit that I've not been able to be an entrepreneur despite having tried to. For example, one of the projects that I started with my husband, who's also a musician, Anish Pradhan, was that we felt that, there is no online encyclopedia of Indian music in all its richness and diversity. How about putting this together? Because it is possible today. And how about getting actual performers and people who are specialists to contribute not only, we were also trying to bridge the divide between theoreticians and academicians and practitioners of music. So we started it. We made the basic interface and we started adding whatever we could. But just to give you an example in practice, that for example, one of the things that I have been taught by my gurus are the seasonal song forms that come under the Thumri category. Now we are in Chaitra Mas. So there is a song form called Chaiti, and now it can also be in the form of a question and an answer. So what is the question? कौन मास फूलेला गुलबवा हो रामा कौन रे मासे. In which month does the rose bloom? Tell me, in which month does the rose bloom? That is the question. The answer in the song is Gendava je phule rama maghre phagunava. The marigold blooms in Magh or Phagun. चैत मास फूलेला गुलाबवा हो रामा कौना रे मासे. So here's a question and an answer. Here's a song that actually tells you something about nature, about seasons, about which month. It's a little lesson in itself, not only a music lesson, but it's a general knowledge lesson that you're getting. So the song itself is telling you a wonderful, wonderful story. And I know this one song. I'm sure that if I were to actually be able to put together this encyclopedia of music, getting more practitioners and more specialists, I can tell you that there would be dozens of these wonderful stories told through song. Unfortunately, we failed at it because we could not find the people to invest in it, and it was obviously something that we could not have done ourselves. It requires a team, and we didn't have the resources to put together that team. But I feel that what Sriramji said about using technology as a very powerful educational tool with music really comes alive for me in the many opportunities that technology offers us today to bring together pedagogy, actual performance, text, image, moving graphics, to bring it all together to make it one of the most wonderful, enriching experiences possible. So I hope that even though I couldn't do it, somebody else will, I hope.
Thank you so very much, and thanks for that lovely performance. I hope many on this live broadcast experience what I did, which is that the sensibility is so different when you experience art versus you experience the intellectual conversation about something. And I hope people experienced both sides of it in our conversation as a result of your lovely rendition. Let's bring this conversation to a close. In closing, we have many aspiring entrepreneurs who are working on audio tech or other art-related tech in the audience. If each of you have any parting words of encouragement for them, we will hear them and then bring this to a closure. Let's go to Namrata first, and then
Yeah. So I just have one thing to say, that as somebody who's tracking independently the culture sector, as a journalist, as somebody who's writing on culture during crisis, my next book, and as somebody who's associated with the Ministry of Culture as a consultant, I feel it's very important that private individuals partner with the government, because the government has the right intention, incredible reach, and unmatched resources. Only they're stymied or deterred by maybe domain capability, and certain bureaucratic challenges may be there. So I think it's whoever can add value and partner with the government in whichever way. I think that's really the way public meets private partnership. These are my closing remarks, sir. Yeah.
Great. Sriram Imani.
Yeah, there's three things I want to say. One is to Shubhaji. Firstly, that was so beautiful, and to me, it serves the one of the you remember songs from childhood so much, and the fact that we have like half the time people think Indian classical music is just about religion. In fact, one of the biggest brands in India, I won't name which one, refused to do a brand partnership with us because they said we operate in the Indian classical music space, and that has to do with Hindu religion alone. And this is a perfect example of how it can just be so much more than that. So thank you for that. The second thing is to the aspiring entrepreneurs who might be watching this. We spoke about the challenges in this space, but the one thing I'll tell you is that if you just keep at it, you develop a fabulous sense of strong unit economics. I do think we are in a space where in a day and age rather where there's a lot of talk about like spending a lot of money on technology, a lot of money on marketing, and just like do billboards and do like all these like crores and crores of like campaigns. But like the challenge that we face also is our biggest strength. For Indian Raga, for example, we've not taken any money in the last 5 years. We're still a small company, but it's really helped us focus and hone in on unit economics and what makes sense. And some of the biggest innovations come from that. So just keep at it and it'll be amazing. Chintan, to you and to the Atal Innovation Mission, I don't know how many of us remember the clip on Doordarshan, which used to be the Rashtriya Saksharta Mission, the song that was Purab se Surya uga dhala jiya, Chalo padhaye kuch kar dikhaye. What a fabulous, heartwarming ad that was to convince anybody and everybody of the need for literacy. That's the thing we would love to see from the government for the sustenance and for the preservation, and more than preservation, to Namrita's point, like taking it forward that culture is important. Culture is really who we are. Like once all the coats and the suits and the fancy offices and everything comes off, really who you are at the core is culture. And the fact that we're having to talk about the need for preservation means it is an urgent need. And that level of a campaign, if it can be shown on prime time, is only something the government of India can do. I don't think any startup will have the money to do that. So if there's any such campaign that is possible to run that really touches you, all the startups in this space, including us, will come forward to support it in the best way possible and take that ahead. And that's one thing we can definitely do jointly, if that helps. But thank you for having me. Really enjoyed having this conversation.
Thank you. Let's go to Sri Raman.
Yeah, hi. So if you're aspiring startup in the audio space, there is the emerging area of creating monetization through performance ads and so on that helps creators make money through distribution and so on. That's a very, very small space. For example, programmatic ads in India for audio doesn't even exist, or if it exists, it's negligible, right? So this sounds too much mumbo jumbo, but if the person listening is a tech person, it's very easy for you to understand performance ads and programmatic ads. So in audio, this is coming up, something that we are also working on. So there's a lot of challenges and need gaps that exist in monetization for creators, and that can be solved through tech, right? So a lot of people in the performance and culture and arts, they have the core skill and talent, but they lack tech and the tech acumen or so, because they are not engineers in that sense. So the right combination makes a perfect sense, because end of day, if you look at consumers, we all like some form of content, right? So some form of content is what we consume, and there is the more and more, it's almost like food. The more and more you consume, we are not gonna run out of our consumption of content or food, right? So this will continue, like Sriram said, all the other tasks will be done by machines and bots. So as humans, it's for us to appreciate art forms, right? So there has to be better monetization models around it. So there is a wide open canvas for it. If you're tech entrepreneur and if you have any friends in performance arts, just ask them what challenges they face in monetization. You will find out amazing business models there. So yeah, that's the message for emerging startups and entrepreneurs in the space. Otherwise, thank you, Chintanji, everyone. Fantastic panel, and Shubhaji, loved your renditions. To listen more, yeah. So thank you so much.
Great. Shubhaji, any words for the entrepreneurs?
No, I'm sorry that I'm not really qualified, but I really feel that one request that I would like to make is that very often when we create technology, we we fail to think of how creators will benefit from it. So there are enough number of wonderful creations happening. How is that going to make the life of an artist better? I think that is the if you're even events or platforms which give you the chance to showcase your work, I think for them also it's important to create a transparent system where you can log things. For example, now technology makes that really easily possible, but we still don't get logs of how our music is being used. So it's very good to say let's create this technology, but unless it is transparency is maintained and transparency is encouraged to see how that technology is actually enabling and providing sustenance and over a long term period for the creators of that content, then I feel it's that it will really be a wonderful coming together and enabling of creating content providers, content makers and creators by technology. So do keep the creators in mind as well.
Great, very, very foundational for any entrepreneur, that is. Well, first of all, let me confess that Shubhaji, your song is going, I'm going to be humming that song for the rest of this evening because it's stuck in my head now. But thank you very much, everybody. That brings us to a close of this rich conversation. To end with one little note underscoring what Namrata said, the very genesis of this program, ILEAP, is to demystify the black box called the B2G entrepreneurship. How do you sell to the government, through the government, which is often for an entrepreneur is very, very difficult to figure out. And in topic after topic, we have tried to bring people from the government who see what kinds of things are going on, and then they plug them into some or the other, proof of concept here, procurement here, this, that, and the other. That's our goal. And so we'll try to do our best for all of you as well. So thanks again, and have a very good evening. Namaste, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.